list that I think are worthy of mention. Some of the most fun I had this year and particularly last year fishing in the autumn was using popper fry, and I think it's one of the most fun ways of fishing, particularly in the back end of the season, is putting a fry on with the foam on the top. And then this year, I learnt this too late probably, but this year you cast it out, give a couple of strips to create the wake, and then you just leave it and a fish will come up and have it. And there was one day in the Lincroft, I had about 5 or 6 fish have a go at the fly in the first hour. You know, it was just absolutely immense. Last year was pretty similar, if not better. And I remember there was one occasion I was fishing with Stephen from a boat, and it sounds ridiculous, but I'd actually got a size 8 long shank popper fry on the point, and this particular size 10 popper fry on a dropper. And we had a 4-hour ticket. I had 18 fish have a go at the fly in those 4 hours. Didn't land one. They all came off for some reason, but it was fun anyway, whilst it lasted. The other fly that I didn't mention from my list was a minke, and a version of the minke has caught me by biggest fish both this season and last season. I've tied it both, the really tiny one that's actually in the pack that Adrian's won, size 10 normal wet fly size, but I tie them up to the snake. It's a kind of a 5 centimetre snake. And this was the pattern that last year I was fishing with Mark. We went to Tower Bank. We both had fish of 4 pounds from Tower Bank, but as soon as we'd done that, the disturbance killed the fishing, and we decided to drive round. It was just the last time when you could fish the overflow. So we parked at the overflow car park, and Mark gets chatting to somebody in the car park, trying to persuade him to join Drake at Fly Fishers. I go down to the water and think, I'm not waiting for him, I'm going to start fishing. Second cast, I had a 5.5 pound rainbow. He was still talking, so I released it, put it back, and he walks down about 10 minutes later. He said, have you had anything? And I said, I've just landed a 5.5 pounder and put it back. And he looks at me, you're not kidding, are you? But
Did he join? Rubbish.
The minke pattern, either with this one's got obviously a silver bit of flash on it, a pearl flash works well as well, but that mink one I think is a really good fry pattern. Only second to the second best for me is a white version of that, white and silver. Again, a brilliant pattern for particularly the fish that are feeding on sticklebacks for some reason. I don't know why, but I've got a lot of fish with sticklebacks in them on that. But with the WhatsApp discussions that were happening in the early part of the season, it was Craig Middleton said that there was one fly that he'd been fishing with in competitions that had done really, really well for him and his team. And he referred to it as a black UV cruncher. Now, crunchers are actually my bogey fly. I'll catch on pheasant tail, and if you make me switch to a cruncher, I'll just stop catching often. They're my real bogey fly. I don't catch on them very often. But I tied some of these black UV crunchers. It is a David McPhail pattern, and he does cover this as well on YouTube. So you'll get my version of it, and you've got David McPhail's online. It is the most complicated fly I tied this season, but as soon as I tried it, I caught on it. So it's the cruncher that even I can get to work. So it's a black UV cruncher. You start off with a fairly fine black normal tying silk, just a standard tying silk, and you just create a base on the body. I'm using a size 10 wet fly hook here, partly because it's slightly bigger. I have fished them size 10, but as I said before, size 12 is the size that I catch most of my fish on. So I will tie this as a size 12 at home as well. but because of how many ingredients it's got, it is a little bit trickier to tie. So the first thing that I then do is I'm going to give it a tail of a few strands of dyed black cockhackle fibres. So just a very straightforward, slim tail. And generally speaking, I tend to try and tie the tails quite relatively short. I tie them slightly shorter than most people, I think. But just put the tail on there. That's fairly straightforward. The thing that you're going to do is the outer part of the body is basically a UV. So it's the pearl medium tinsel in eye blue, so in ice blue. So it's the UTC ice blue, and I know most people who tie regularly will have some of this in their kits. It's a very commonly used material, and that you're going to use as the overbody. So you catch that in at the end, and then the other rib, and this I think is what partly makes it quite tricky, is there is a rib of natural peacock stripped quill. So I'm going to tie that in as well. So select one of these. I'm going to tie it in at the base, at the end, and then just take the silk all the way up, certainly to at least halfway, if not beyond, making sure that everything's in place. Trim off the hackle fibres, and that's where you've got, and just tidy that up. So that's now set up for the main part of the body. Now the next thing is, as any fly tyer knows, and this might happen to me anyway, quills really love to break, they love to snap, they love to come off when a trout eats the fly. So what I'm going to do here is a little bit of a dab of super glue on the body of on the silk here, put some super glue on, and now I'm going to wrap the quill around that super glue, hopefully stuck on, in relatively close turns, not touching turns, but relatively close turns. And I'm going to take it to part way along the hook shank, but I'm going to leave plenty of space at the end for a thorax. So that's now tied in the quill body. Okay. This then gets completely overlaid by touching turns of the ice blue UV all the way through. Now the ice blue is relatively clear. It just gives that kind of bluish UV haze to the body of the fly, but the point is you can still see the rib. Okay, so that is now the body of the fly all done. So let's just make sure that's all tidied up there with the UV. The thorax to this fly is some kind of red, and they use, David McFell uses the ice dubbing, or one of those flash dubbings. This is one that I got from Fulling Mill, which I think is really quite a nice one. So I'm going to use a pinch of that. So I just dab a little bit of sticky wax onto the thread to make sure that it sticks. This is a synthetic one. The Fulling Mill is called Tactical Micro Flash Dub. Okay, but ice dub, any of those, as long as it's a reasonably deep red and it's got a bit of flash to it. Yeah, I mean seal's fur will work, most definitely. You need hardly any of this. You need a tiny amount. Yeah. And so all I'm doing is slightly covering the body with that, and later I might tease some of that out. There's a second part to the thorax, which is dyed black peacock herl. I don't need a long piece for this. I only need a relatively small amount. So I'm just going to tie that in, catch that in. And again, because the herl is a bit brittle, what you would normally do is tie some of that in and then go over it with the silk so that it's a little bit more robust. Now that's moved a little bit further forward than I would like, so I'm going to just redo that there. There we are. Okay, so that's the front part of my thorax done. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a hackle on the front, but I want the mobility of a hen hackle, not a cock hackle. So I'm just going to select one of the hen hackles from my dyed black hen cape. So I've just picked out a small hen hackle, and what I do with hen hackles, but not cock hackles, is I tie them in, not at the base, but I tie them in at the tip. So I tie it in at the tip like that. I can trim that piece off. And then I'll just grab that with my hackle pliers and gradually move it forwards, brushing the fibres back as best I can. So it's a relatively light hackle this. It doesn't need to be particularly dense. I'll tidy this up in a moment. Brush all of that back so that all the hackle fibres are pointing backwards. There's a little piece there that just needs a trim. And then the final component on the fly is a split piece of jungle cock as cheeks. So what I'm doing there is just putting the jungle cock either side of the hook shank, like that. That's actually not too bad. So just tie that into place, make sure it's secure. I'll give that a trim. And now I'm just tidying up those loose ends there, building up that head a little bit, and I do a whip finish. Okay, so that's the fly finished.
Well done, mate.
Right. And I'll just varnish that. And again, when you start to shine a light on that, you will see just how the UV picks up the sunlight, and that really attracts the fish in. And that is the first cruncher that I know really works for me.
Even for you.
Even for me. So there we are, the black UV cruncher.
Right, thanks. Oh, you make it look silly. Yeah.
I'll be like 6 hours trying to get the jump that far.
That's a good thought.